dusty road, a man alone. Let it rot.
And now we're at our Readers on the Run section for today, and I'm going to bring you a story by Ted Carrick titled The Seagull Poet of Butter Bay. In a vision, he'd once seen another seagull in a top hat dancing at the Trocadero. It was the most elegant thing ever. He became entranced by imagery and longed to give expression to his own special voice. There was no doubt he was a poet at heart. That's what his girlfriend, Sandy Barr, told him. Never mind, he knew the truth anyway. He was always functioning with his head in the stratosphere. There was something about it that felt so right. He knew it was his true calling. He was a vagabond, a troubadour, a traveling jester, riding the winds and sometimes performing for his meals. But he had higher aspirations. He wanted to put his experiences in words. His world was something that needed and cried out for sharing. He'd breathed in the autumn's tangy smell from wood-burning stoves, felt the sharpness in the air as winter's cold grip crept in. He'd seen the brightness bloom as spring's healing bonnet led to summer's torpor and absorbed the splintery hues of water in all its seasons. He knew writing poetry was no path to riches. That was okay with him. Few seagulls achieved worldly success. Jonathan Livingston had been a rare exception. For a while, Johnny L. had been able to enjoy a high life based on royalties. Then the fortune ran out, and existence depended on scraps, the same as for everyone else. Still, he was bothered by some misconceptions about his brethren. The bad thing humans said about seagulls, that they were all scavengers, was a licorice-hearted lie. Humans thought they were so smart. What did they know? Did they think all his swooping and swirling in flight was just for fun? No, it was skywriting in 3D. The aerial scripture was satisfying in its own way, but now he wanted to find a larger audience. How to reach out to people. Damnable kids with their opposable thumbs, text messaging each other willy-nilly. It was like trying to decipher the Da Vinci Code, figuring out what they were saying. Give him old-fashioned language, something he could get his beak around. There was little encouragement for artistic expression in his crepuscular world. Cawing crows and their cousin ravens were vicious critics. What gave them the right? The last time one of them squawked something interesting was "Nevermore" at Edgar Allan Poe's garden party. If he was going to take writing seriously, maybe he should start composing movie reviews. That's where some of the best phrases and thematic stitchings were to be found. He knew the subject matter. It wasn't as if he hadn't circled around and dropped in on enough drive-in theaters in his day. There were words he had always wanted to use. He knew from experience the beating and sparkling sea could be variously vermilion, cerulean, and umbrous. The amniotic air was often languorous or limpid. His middle name was loquacious. Ah, poetry, the muted music of the soul. Unless one went on a speaking tour, what wouldn't he give to project his words before a receptive audience in a plummy English actor's voice? But all these plans and speculations were tiring him out. He'd stand one-legged on this rock for a while and let the day's last embrace slip away. In the twilight, he'd go for a final swim. If the setting sun angled just right, he'd ride along on a seeming sea of butter. A few popcorn clouds would float above, ready for dipping. He'd wait for the first stars to sprinkle down from heaven's salt shaker before heading inland to some farmer's field. Wheat-quilted dreams would then bring new imaginings. It was a mighty fine life. The end. And that has been The Seagull Poet of Butter Bay by Ted Carrick. I hope you've enjoyed that poetic reading. Thank you.
Let it rot.
Hello?
Good morning, John. It's Donna Carrick at Dead to Rights. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I wanted to talk to you today because I know that you have coordinated a number of anthologies in the past, and anthologies are something that are fascinating for most writers. You yourself are a writer. You call yourself a writer of fact, fiction, poetry, fantasy, sci-fi, mystery, and horror genres. And with such a broad set of literary interests, I think it was only natural that you founded the Twitter hashtag Friday Flash for authors of short stories. I wanted to know, when did you first start hosting that online anthology, and what story genres did you include?
I used to be a moderator at Editor Unleashed, and I participated in a lot of writers' forums besides that. And got to know a lot of writers online, and Twitter was becoming quite the thing. And it just occurred to me that wouldn't it be great to help each other out? And so I thought, well, why not start a group and get a hashtag on Twitter, and then we can post our stories on our blogs and post the link on Twitter with a hashtag. And so I thought I looked at a couple of hashtags, and they were already being used, and then Friday Flash seemed to work.
Yes.
And so we started doing that in May of 2009, late May of 2009. And at first, we just all did it independently, and then I would go through and do various online searches for the Friday Flash hashtag and stuff like that, and manually collect those links, and I'd put out, I'd type up a Friday Flash report, and it was quite burdensome.
Yes, yes.
Particularly as more and more people started joining in.
I remember the Friday Flash report that you used to do.
Yeah, and so somewhere along the line, Tim Van Zant offered to help by creating the Friday Flash collector, and that people would just use an online form, and they'd enter all their own data, and then his little software would chug out the list. And then I just had to write a little introductory paragraph, and that really helped a lot.
Yes.
So that's pretty much how it got started.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can honestly say that you were one of the first people that Ted Carrick and I met on Twitter, and it was because of your Friday Flash. It just took off like a great guns, and it was really popular for writers for quite a long time. I don't know if you're still going with it, or if the two anthologies that you did kind of wrapped it up, but tell me, is it something that you're still considering going forward with?
Well, my wife found a lump in 2012, and it turned out to be breast cancer. My volunteers on the Friday Flash website, Tim and my friend Susan Chambliss developed a website for Friday Flash, moving it from my blog to the Friday Flash blog.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Angie Cabanzello and Estella Azul and my friend Susan pretty much took up the bulk of the work of keeping things running at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You had enough on your plate at that time, I know.
And as time went on, I realized that I was going to burn them out.
Yes.
And volunteers can only do so much.
Yes.
And so I asked them if they wanted to drop out, and eventually they all said yes.
Yes, yes.
And so the Friday Flash we moved to Facebook and to Google Plus, and it sort of limps along there. I've gotten less and less involved over time, and so really, the Facebook page is really fairly.
I know it really became too much for one person, didn't it? It got so big so fast that I think it really was too much, and especially with the personal situation that you were facing at the time. I think that the thing just grew out of itself. I remember at the time that everybody was tweeting Friday Flash. Almost every darn author that we knew was involved in it. So it was too successful for its own britches, I think, in a way, wasn't it?
If I had unlimited resources, then I could have hired, staff and probably kept it running. But
Yeah, well, it was a brilliant vision. But I mean, you were the one with the vision, and so. For volunteers, I hear what you're saying. It's not really their vision, so there's a limit to how much they can contribute to it,
Oh, yeah, and they work really hard, but, it can only go on for so long before you burn them out.
That's right.
And I didn't want to do that. We never got to that point.
But and along the way, you had a great achievement in morphing it into 2-volume print editions, and that's a tremendous achievement for you and for all the authors that were involved. It puts it into posterity rather than just a Twitter hashtag. Now, I know from my own experience how much work is involved in coordinating an anthology, and it's kind of like herding cats. Bringing a collection of authors, all with different backgrounds and different desires, to meet your timelines and processes. Did you have any help in coordinating that? Who did the editing, and who handled the administrative aspects, like gathering the contracts?
Well, the first volume was just sort of an idea I had after about a year of realizing that we had some really terrific stories. And so I just posted it on the blog saying, what do y'all think about putting together an anthology? And it got a lot of enthusiastic response. So then I had to figure out how to do that.
Yes.
I'm a pretty firm believer in crowdsourcing. And so I just put out a call for volunteers to judge the stories. We ended up with 26 judges, mostly from the community itself. And so to prevent, bias, we had people submit 3 stories each. If they wanted to participate, they could submit up to 3 stories. And then the judges, and those submissions were blind, and so the judges didn't know who wrote them. Although, because they were in the community, if they recognized the story, they'd obviously know. So
yes.
That wasn't perfect.
Yes.
But I tried.
Still, it's a pretty good process. It's a very difficult process to have blind judging.
Well, and what really helped was doing the 3, you can enter up to 3 stories. Because people are often not very good judges of their own writing.
Yes.
And so they might submit one story that they think is absolutely their best and not submit a couple of others. And actually, one of those others would have really been much better. And so the judges could look at 3 different stories, and they knew they were from the same author, but they didn't know what author necessarily. And then they could read those 3 stories and then rank them 1, 2, 3. And then it was just mathematics as to which ones, from the various judges, which ones got the most points. And that became the selection for all the people that submitted. And everybody that submitted got passed on to the second level of judging. And then the second level of judging, and so everybody that submitted got a story up to the second level of judging. And then for the second level of judging, I figured that really did need to be blind. And so I recruited some friends that I knew, mostly from my book club. And they judged the second level of judging.
How to handle resources there, John. That's terrific.
And then there were still, that just meant the best story from each of those people got selected. And then that was more stories than the anthology was going to include, and so I had to make the final cut. And
so you acted as final editor-in-chief.
I was the final editor, and I don't like that.
No, I know.
I really hated having to contact people and tell them they didn't make the cut.
I know. We want everybody. We want everybody to do well, don't we? I mean, it speaks to our love of books and our love of this industry, our love of the authors. It's just horrible when you have to tell somebody no. I mean, it's not what we get into it for, but you have to do it.
Yeah, you do. And you know, to this day, nothing thrills me more than seeing somebody from the Friday Flash community getting published.
Yes.
It really, you know, lights up my heart.
I know.
Then there was the editing, and Friday Flash was always an international affair, and I wanted to maintain that international flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I recruited, again, from the community, mostly, 14 regional editors.
Okay.
And not 14 regions, but 14 editors for various regions. So if people wrote in British English or in American English or Canadian English or Australian English, they were being edited by somebody from Great Britain or somebody from Australia and so on.
Wow.
And that way, the things that I wouldn't know would be quirky for a given reader of that dialect would sound natural.
Yes, and that's a big, hairy deal. I mean, I know I have a tendency to slip everything over to U.S. English in the final edit, but while I'm reading, it helps to know that all of these regions do use a different language, and they have varying colloquialisms, too, that may not mean anything to one reader, but means a lot to the people in the region they're from.
Well, I knew there was one story from Great Britain where they mentioned something, and it's like, what in the heck are they talking about? But my regional editor knew exactly what it was.
And that broadens your knowledge, too, as editor.
Yeah. And then we published it all by Smashwords.
Yes. So you got it into ebook format. You also got it into print format. And they are terrific books, both volumes. I really do recommend them to our readers. If you love short stories, because that's what these are, define flash fiction for us, John, before we go any further.
Well, in Friday Flash, it was basically anything that was 1,000 words or less that actually told a story.
Yes.
You know, beginning, middle, and end.
It does have to be a complete story, folks.
Yeah. And we took basically any genre. I discouraged erotica because we had minors, that were contributors just as well as adults. And there were stories that I did not put into the Friday Flash report because they were too graphic. But that only happened like a couple times. And we even took poetry. You know, if the poem actually told a story, that would be fine.
Wow.
And that only happened a handful of times too.
Yeah, that's terrific, though. I love what you did with that. That's why I wanted to talk to you, and that's why I made sure to add you to the early list for the first quarter of interviews for Dead to Rights, because you brought such a joy into the industry when you were working on this, and I think it's been a lasting joy. I mean, people all over refer to flash fiction now that maybe never heard of it before you came on the scene. So, and I hear it all the time, and I've always got people submitting to me saying this is a flash piece, or if it's an anthology, they'll ask, can I submit 2 pieces? Well, you can submit them, certainly, you know. But as well as being a writer in multiple genres, you're also a voracious reader. I know this because I follow you avidly on Facebook, so I'm always watching what you're reading. And one of the things I did notice is that we both loved Ursula K. Le Guin, who is the author for our readers of The Dispossessed, The Left Hand of Darkness, and a number of other really fantastic titles. Ursula actually passed away recently, so if you are not familiar with her work, listeners, please go out and research her. I also noticed, John, that you recently read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein, thank you. Another literary giant. And my question for you is twofold about your reading. What is your very favorite desert island go-to genre, the one that you would reach for above all others? And B, who is your favorite and perhaps most influential writer as it regards your own work?
Well, if I had to, those are both very tough questions, actually.
Yes.
If I had to pick one genre that I would only have available to me, like on a desert island. Maybe mystery, I'm not sure. But perhaps mystery. But if I could only pick one book to have with me, it would be The Lord of the Rings.
Ah, the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as my most influential or favorite authors, that really varies by genre. And even then, it would be hard to choose just one.
Can you name a few? Let's throw a few out.
For mystery, probably Conan Doyle and Laurie, for influential, and Laurie King for favorite. She really got me with Folly. I read Folly and I just fell in love with her writing. Fantasy, Tolkien and Le Guin, and for science fiction, Ray Bradbury. I actually had the honor of meeting Ray Bradbury at a science fiction convention in St. Louis, and he turned out to be just as delightful in person as I perceived in writing, and that just made me feel good.
Oh, which year did you meet him?
Oh God, I can't remember.
It was a few years ago, Science Con in St. Louis?
It was at Archon. I'd have to go back and look at the Archon archives to figure out what year. He was very old, and he was. It wasn't too many years after that he died.
Oh, okay. Sorry to hear that. So that's Ray Bradbury. Have I got that right?
Yeah, Ray Bradbury.
Okay, so that's some really great names, listeners. If you haven't read Ursula K. Le Guin, Tolkien, of course, the master, Ray Bradbury, and who else did you mention?
Laurie King.
Laurie King. Okay, great. There's some terrific names to look up and research. I want to give to listeners. I mean, many of our listeners, I hope and believe, are readers, not just writers. We know that writers love to read. But there may be people listening who just don't know all these authors, too. So I think it's important to get some of these names out to them,
Yeah. As far as one of the most influential authors on me in my life, it might be Jean de Brunhoff, the author of the Babar books.
Author of the which books? Sorry?
Babar, the elephant.
Okay, yeah.
I read Babar and Father Christmas when I was young. And the cutaway of Father Christmas's house and workshop, the side view cutaway graphic, just fascinated me. And I started drawing stuff like that myself, and I attribute that to the development of my spatial analysis tendencies.
And probably your creative tendencies too, your vision. I mean, our vision's so important.
Oddly enough, became a cartographer, which was my course in life.
There you go.
Me becoming a cartographer, I kind of attribute to Babar.
Yeah. It's funny because who influences us, people may not realize, who influences us as people, not just as writers, is not always the greatest writer on earth, but it's the writer that speaks to us on an important subject to us at a time when we are going through change in our own lives.
Yeah, something that gets into you.
Yes. And may not be the greatest writer on that subject, but it's the writer that spoke to exactly what we needed to hear when we were going through our biggest changes in our lives. I'll give you an example. It would be Richard Bach. When I was around 19, 20, I was going through major changes in my life. And Jonathan Livingston Seagull and The Blue Feather, both those books just completely spoke to me. I've read them since, and they are great works, there's no question. I'm not sure I would have latched on to them in my later years the way I did in my younger years, and they still influence me. They influence the way I think and the way I look at life.
And I also think it's important for writers to read a lot, and toward that end, I'm reading and rereading classics from many genres, and everything from Gilgamesh to Heinlein. And I just think a writer needs a sound grounding in the classics just to draw upon.
I do too. And I just, my hair curls at the follicles when I hear people say they don't have time for the classics or for the poets. I mean, pick one. It doesn't have to be poetry that you read, but these things will influence your cadence. They'll influence the way you look at the world and the way you express what you see.
Yeah. That said, I think some classics probably age better than others.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think some of us as readers have more tolerance for some classics than we do for others. And that's all fair. But read some of it, please. Ground yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now I'm reading, unbelievably, I'm reading The Great Gatsby for the first time.
For the first time? Wow.
Yeah. And I'm surprising myself in that I find that I like it.
And if you saw the recent movie before you read the book, I think that would affect how you read it too. I think really that Leonardo DiCaprio was brilliant in it. I'm not going to give any critiquing there. He was brilliant, but I loved that novel from a very young age. I really loved it. So.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I liked it. I expected to not like it.
Why did you think that, John? Because it's funny. What?
I don't know. Just the era. I knew it was about a rich guy, and
yes.
Just my own taking my own prejudices into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it's quite compelling.
It really is, and it holds up. That's the funny thing about it. It really holds up to scrutiny under current times, you know?
Like I said, some classics age better than others.
Yeah, that's right. Now, books and writing might be everything to us, but it's not everything to the world or to everything that we need in our lives. We have to keep a balance, and because I watch you so much on Facebook, I'm not stalking you, I promise, John. I watch you among the people I watch. I think it's fascinating what you get up to. And I know that one of the things you're really striving for is a good physical balance in your life, walking and gardening and being outdoors. Is this something that you started recently, or is it something that you've always been aware of?
Well, I've been heavy all my life, and I used to wear the husky size when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I got quite obese.
Oh no!
Eventually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so I've been through fits and starts on trying to get things under control, all my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite successful back in the late 90s, getting down, lost about 150 pounds or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I gained back about 60 of that eventually. And now I'm trying again very hard to get
It's important though, isn't it? And it's important to keep an awareness of it because, as I say, all the things I love are sedentary. I mean, I love writing, I love editing, I love publishing, formatting, I love doing these interviews, I love knitting, I love crocheting, I love drawing. Everything I love is sedentary. And so I have to retrain my mind. I have to remind myself I love to walk, I love the outdoors, I love the birds singing, I really have to remind myself of that, and it's an active game because, like many writers, yes, I struggle with weight. It's an ongoing thing, so something for people to be aware of. I love to read, and reading is very sedentary, unless of course you get Audible and you walk while you listen.
I use audiobooks a lot. Yeah.
So do I.
My doctor's constantly suggesting that I increase my exercise, and she knows I have an exercise bike, and I just can't hardly bring myself to use it. It's just so mind-numbing.
Yes.
And usually my exercise goes up when the weather's nice, and it goes down in the wintertime.
That's pretty normal. Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I really hate the exercise bike. Maybe I should just start walking, like doing mall walking or something like that. And then we have this big new hardware store near me, and it's got 2 stories, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go walk over there. And so I bought myself a pedometer, and it doesn't matter if it's 4 below zero.
Yeah, exactly.
I can go over there and start walking, and I discovered they have like 4.4 miles of aisles.
Yes, because you're in a northern city like me. I mean, I'm in Toronto, and we got snow, man, and we got ice, and it's slippery, and I love to walk, and I try to walk every day, but when it's really slushy and slippery like this, I find it hard because I'm really worried about falling and then not being able to walk at all,
Yeah.
Yeah,
my brother was a tremendous bike rider, and he's older than me. And a couple of his friends,
Yeah.
And he just decided, bike riding for a 70-year-old is just too dangerous.
Yes.
If you fall over and break your hip,
That's right.
beginning of the end.
That's right, exactly. But you have to keep that healthy balance, though. I mean, anybody listening, I really encourage you, keep that healthy balance. If you're listening to this podcast, put your earbuds in and go for a walk while you listen. I'll be there with you, cheering you on, I want to see people healthy.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting a trike. They're not as dangerous as far as tipping over.
Are you allowed to ride them on the sidewalk?
And she says you got to learn how to steer. And so you can tip them over, but
yeah, I love it. I'd love to see you on a tricycle. That would be great. You're going to have to post a picture if you do it.
Yeah, and they're extending the trail near my house. So
yeah. Now, what are you currently working on, John? What's going on in your world right now?
Really, sad to say, not a whole lot in the way of writing. When Cindy died, really sort of lost my spark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's finally starting to come back. So if I'm working on anything in the way of writing, it's mostly mystery or dystopian science fiction.
Okay.
I had a series of dystopian science fiction in Friday Flash that I called Life in Hell, spelled H-E-L, and from the name of the star system these people were living at.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to write new episodes of that every once in a while with the idea that someday I might edit those into a novel.
Mm-hmm.
I have a novel sort of outlined in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple of mysteries and detective novels and novellas that I go back to and hope to publish someday.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, if you pull these stories together into a novel format, let me know, because I would love to get you back on Dead to Rights to talk about it. I know that there was, and I don't want to presume, but I know that there was a spot where things changed significantly for you. And because we've been friends online for a long time, I was aware of when that happened. And it was another of the reasons I wanted to get you on, because my sense is that you're starting to come back into your creative self again. And, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I think maybe the walking helps. There's nothing like a long bike ride or a long walk.
Yeah, I agree.
Spark the muse.
I know, and you learned so much through your whole Friday Flash process. Do you have any tip? Do you have a tip or two for our new writers that you can offer about any part of the industry from what you learned?
Probably not anything they haven't heard before. If you want to write.
That's the big one, isn't it?
If you want to get published, write and polish.
Yes.
Practice.
That's right. That really is the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And there's nothing new under the sun. Everybody's looking for the magic wand. But it really is all about writing enough pages, writing enough words, and then going back and I think getting a writing critique group is big. Whether it be a group online or a live group that meets, somebody that you can share your passion with and they can give you feedback, because feedback's so essential to growth.
Yeah, I agree. I've tried that a couple of times and they always seem to fall apart.
I know, they do fall apart, but then you just put another one together. I mean, I do. Now, at your stage of the game, I think you're probably past that, but for new writers, I think it's just critical.
I don't think I'm past that. I think it's really important for people to get feedback.
Yeah.
And I don't care what stage you're at. I think that's important.
That's true.
For the more established, successful writers, they get that feedback from their agents and their editors.
Yes,
so
that's true.
For people that aren't at that stage and don't have that kind of money, you have to find it other places.
Yeah.
And it might sound a little odd, given my history of posting fiction online, but I think writers should resist the urge to write and post.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's for two reasons. One, if you post it online, then you probably won't be able to sell it except as a reprint.
Yeah.
And second, writing, like wine, improves with age. Write it, put it away, write another couple of things, then take it back out and polish it. And once you've done that, like once, submit it. You gotta submit.
Yeah. Now, Dorothy McIntosh brought a different outlook to it. She emphasized, know what you want to do with your writing before you write. And I think that, in speaking to whether you post online or not, that's a big question. If you never intend to seek an agent or a publisher, and you're happy sharing your work online, then by all means go for it. But
sure.
Yeah.
I just mean if you want to sell it commercially.
Yes, if you want to sell it commercially, then it's probably better to keep it to yourself until it's in a state where you want to present it to publishers and agents.
Right. Or even self-publish it. I mean,
yeah.
You want your work when you self-publish it to come out as new.
Yes. Yes, as new, exactly. That's right. Yeah, that's a really good point, John. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on Dead to Rights. Stay with me because I'm going to chat with you for a second after we're offline. But I really want to thank you for joining our listeners today.
Okay, well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
A dusty road, a man alone. His vital signs go on hold. And I don't know what you've been told, but the years have turned my eyes gold. And I told you what you told me, we'd never be in the same boat for free. Yet it rides, let it rock.